So welcome along to this little session on the SharePoint functionality of Office 365 and what can be done with Civil 3D. Hope you're all doing well on in your respective sides of the Tasman here, both countries. Hope you're all safe and well. And obviously this is a topic that is generating a lot of interest at the moment, how we can work collaboratively with, or in the civil sphere, with the Autodesk products. So this is a little bit about me just quickly. There's my picture obviously in the top corner for those who haven't met me yet. I've been around doing this job for about 13 years, doing the training and the support for the civil products for A2K technologies. Yeah, working Civil 3D, Map 3D, InfoWorks, a little bit of AutoCAD done as well. It's a little bit about A2K for anybody that's here who has not worked with this before. We're more than just training and selling the software. So if there's any of those functions that you're interested in talking to us about, give your local A2K office a call. So we're looking at the Microsoft SharePoint. Now, Autodesk and Microsoft have been working together to put some functionality together to make these things work over the past year or two. There is functionality there. I've been experimenting, working with it over the last few days. And what we're going to be doing in the next half hour or so is I'll just be presenting my findings and hopefully giving you a kickstart as to the things you need to be aware of if you're going to be sharing your civil drawings over SharePoint. The types of things we're interested in looking at the use of for a civil project will be the drawing files and the file structures they're currently kept in. There will be what happens to the Xrefs and also what happens to the data shortcuts, Xrefs. You will probably have other file types like your documents and things also saved there and the others, but we are most interested here at the moment in looking at specifically the drawing functionality. That's what I'm going to be focusing on for the next little while. Now, as we go, if you've got questions, put them into the chat panel on this webcast buttons. And we'll hopefully have a little bit of time at the end. We can have a look at some of those before we close. So if you just put them in there, we'll deal with them at the end when we get there. All right. So with SharePoint, you've got a couple of options. You can either work with files directly downloaded from the browser. Let me just bring up my pen here. So downloading directly from your browser. Now, operating SharePoint, it's on Office 365, which is all operates through a browser interface generally. There are apps for it, but the browser is the same as the apps. And so you can set up a folder structures or a project and save in the documents all of your folders off your network. So you can do that. So operating directly from the browser, you would pick your files out of here, you'd open them, close them, work on them, save them back up into here to overwrite what's previously there. Problem with that is that, well, let's go and have a look at the pros and cons for the download from browser system. So download from browser. It does the advantages. It has a common location where all data can be stored by people. It can also be accessed by those people and obviously saved back to that same place. So there is no duplication of folders. It's all kept in one place. Also working from the directly through your browser, it's harder to accidentally delete files than what it is working through shared folders and replicated folders on your machine. The disadvantages are the Xrefs and data shortcuts won't be working. So when you download a drawing, a DWG file, the Xrefs and data shortcuts will be left behind. Okay, so that's not ideal for what we're looking for, I don't think. However, you do have another option. You can sync folders on your machine to the ones up on SharePoint. The way you do that is to open a series of, or a folder up on SharePoint, and you use the sync button here, and it will replicate all of those down onto your local machine, onto the folder location where you choose to save it. And it will show up here with this little like some sort of file symbol, a blue file symbol next to it in your browser on your computer. Let's talk about that. So we'll spend most of the rest of this little webcast looking directly at how to work with the sync folders and how to set them up, make them work. So coming on through, when you hit that sync button, it will ask to set up your SharePoint synced folders. It actually says OneDrive when you do that. That's okay. It goes through the OneDrive system, but you're actually using a SharePoint setup. It'll ask you to put in your email address, which is your login for Office. Then it'll come onto the second panel. Now this is the important one. You want to make sure that everybody that is working on a particular project, a particular lot of civil folders, has the location of where these synced folders are being kept on their computer all on the same path. So in my case, I put them on the C drive under a folder called Work OneDrive, or Work SharePoint if you like. But in order to do that, you need to go change location. By default, it will be putting it under your username, your user files and folders. You don't want them there. Otherwise, you have to, the pathing of Xrefs and data shortcuts will be different for everybody, and that would just make it impossible. So you want to tell everybody to have their SharePoint folders, OneDrive folders, SharePoint folders is really what it is, the SharePoint sync folders, all at the same address, on the same drive name on their machines. Then you'll be able to work together. Okay, so that's very important. In terms of referencing what I'm telling you now later on, this particular webcast will be put up publicly on YouTube under the A2K channel, so you'll be able to refer to this later on for your reference. So for the Xrefs, in order to get this to work, and so you don't have to repath all your Xrefs, you want to be using relative pathing for your Xrefs. So that means the save path will have a dot and a folder location relative to the location of the drawing. Now, by default, these days, AutoCAD does it that way. If you haven't changed it, that's the way it'll be doing it. Ideally, also, you want to have it as an overlay type rather than an attachment type, so that when you're loading this and unloading it, it won't be going looking for a whole bunch of nested Xrefs. If you can make that work, do it that way. Once you do that, or if you've already done that, before you've loaded the drawings up onto SharePoint, and ideally that's probably the best way to do it, this will all be functional. So if it's already set up like that on your machines, that is, or on your files and folders, that is great. When it goes up to SharePoint, the Xrefs will be working already. And as you can see, you just get the little balloon notification down the bottom corner here when when the Xref goes out of date, if something changes. So that's good. Now, where it's actually working from will be your actual synced folders. That's where it's actually running from and then duplicating up onto SharePoint. Okay, so that is good. Xrefs, not too much difficulty as long as they're still on relative pathing. Put them on relative pathing before you upload them if they're not. Data shortcuts. After repathing, they will work. So we need to repath first of all, open a drawing. So that'll be opening it from your shared files in the sync folders. Then you'll have to come into that particular drawing and repath the data shortcuts if you have data shortcuts. So you can see in here, I've repathed them to, this is the working folder. So you right click on there, go set the working folder, and I've set it to the working folder that's on my replicated files, which is C, work, OneDrive folder, and then the file structure. This is it here. That's the whole file structure going through to my webcasts, documents, and it's actually much longer than that. Now, what I did find I had to also do when using SharePoint was that I had to actually come into these manage data shortcuts here. Off my screen. Manage data shortcuts in yellow there. And bring up this panel. And the data shortcuts I needed, these are the drawing objects in my current drawing. These are the data shortcuts in the data shortcut folder I'm looking at. I did actually need to relink them. Now that may or may not be the case in your particular instance, but do check. I needed to actually relink those to get these two locations being the same. And then the data shortcuts worked. So after repathing, like this, the data shortcuts will work. Okay, so be aware of that. You will need to do that for each drawing. Because I've suggested and recommended that everybody has the same folder here for your SharePoint shared files folder. Then once one person has done this, anybody that opens it up on their own machine, on a different person, different location, different part of the planet, will also have this pathing all working for them automatically. Okay, so that's why we need to have them all on the same drive name or drive letter, and the same folder name that you're going to be putting these things in. Let's be aware of that. So, when using AutoCAD or Civil 3D, we have when you open a drawing, this one here, it produces two more drawings which lock that drawing from anybody else opening it. Well, they're not drawings, they're little files. One is an update file, and the other one is a lock file, DWL drawing lock. I think that's what it means, a drawing lock file. These are not replicated up onto SharePoint. Okay, so while a network will work this way, shown on the left, and lock those drawings for you as soon as you open them, SharePoint does not work that way. Okay, so this is one of the things, at least, and there are, I will talk at the end a little bit about these, that has not been incorporated, or perhaps cannot be incorporated into SharePoint. So you need to be aware of it. So the question is, what then do we do? We don't want the ability for two different people, or three or four, to open the same drawing and then all be saving over the top of each other. And whoever saved last is the version that you actually ended up with. So we want to control that. So options, there is manual locking on SharePoint. So you can come into your SharePoint web interface on the left here, and you can right click on a drawing file before you open it, and you can come down to more and check out, and that puts a little lock on that, or a little checkout symbol on there, which is actually a lock. It stops anybody else from checking it out until you check it back in. However, if that is a drawing file and you then open it up in Civil 3D or AutoCAD, and you do a save, the lock, which is this here, this little arrow, gets transferred to the backup file, which is here in the previous structure. So that's not terribly useful. The lock does not stay on your DWG, it just falls off to the backup file, which is the DWG becomes. So that's another thing you need to be aware of. These checkouts and check back in are not going to work very well with the way AutoCAD drawing works, Civil 3D drawing works. And in fact, that's what this is talking about. There's your adding the backup file, and these two sync issues relate to the DWL and DWL2 files that it couldn't sync because they're not recorded. Okay, so there are issues around this that you need to be aware of. The other, the other thing you need to be aware of is when you do save a drawing, these are both, what we're looking at here, are both up on the SharePoint website or web link, or web, interface. Before you've opened a DWG file, you can see both the drawing and the backup file. You go and open the drawing file and you're working on it. As soon as you do a save on it, the DWG file disappears from out of SharePoint, and you can only see the backup file in there. Anybody else that's looking at SharePoint same time as you're working on the file will not see the file anymore. It will have disappeared as soon as you do a save. If you do another save, another save, another save, it just stays disappeared. It doesn't come back until you close that drawing in Civil 3D or AutoCAD. So we need to be careful about how we do that. So let's go back to the previous one. The way I'm thinking is this actually is a kind of lock, in that if this is me, and this is Al. If I'm wanting to work on a drawing, I can open it, I can do a save straight away, and that will disappear it from out of Al's screen. And so he can then no longer open that, which is good. The problem is this is not instantaneous. So in between me doing a save and that file disappearing is about a minute. And it also disappears out of his synced folders as well, which is also about a minute update. So there's potentially a minute or so within which multiple people could open a DWG file. So in association with, or at the same time as opening a drawing and immediately doing a save, you might need another backup system, such as if you're about to open a file, you put an email out to everybody that's working on this particular project, you have a project group for your emails, and say, I'm about, note down the file you're about to open, so that people can be aware of this 1 minute difference in time. And if they've already got that open, they can email straight back and say, hey, I've got it open. Or they can, if they're about to open a file, check those emails before they do so. I think that's really the only safe way I can think of actually making it work without the possibility of somebody accidentally having multiple files open at the same time. And if they are, you're going to whoever saves last is the one that's actually going to end up with their file being the one that is being represented up in the SharePoint folders. Well, that is, yeah, or saves and close the drawing last, then it goes up. So if you can come up with a better system, I'd love to know about it. But at the moment, having thought about it myself, with the things that I've found about SharePoint, that's the best system I can think of at the moment. Obviously, it is open to still user error, so you do have to be a little bit careful. In terms of if you were to talk to Autodesk and say, why isn't this working properly? They would tell you to use their product, which is BIM 360, and that doesn't have this problem. It doesn't have this issue. It takes account of document locking properly and easily. But they've worked with Microsoft to make at least this much work. Going on, when you do make changes, save your drawings, save and close your drawings, just opening other documents, you're going to get this little sync symbol appear next to your cloud. It's actually a OneDrive cloud, but SharePoint uses the same thing. And it is doing that quite a lot. If you click on that little cloud, as shown on the right here, it gives you a list of what it's actually doing and what it's done. How long ago? It does do a lot of that. So if you're actually using this and you are still on a network of some sort, it generates a lot of network traffic. And it can take a while for things to sync, like that 1 minute delay. So just be aware of those as well. It's not completely instantaneous at all. You do need to be a little bit aware of what it's doing when you close things down, when you open them up, and just keep a track of what it's actually doing in the background when this little recycle symbol is showing there. There are some good things about it. It does have versioning. So you can, up in the web interface, as you can see here, you can select a particular file. You can right click on it and you can go show the version history. You can actually see the versions 1, 2, and 3 that are shown here when they're saved, who by. And you can actually, well, the view doesn't work terribly well in SharePoint, but you can, if you know those files, maybe you need to actually download them directly from here if you wanted to view them through AutoCAD, see which one's which. You can go restore, which means take version 2 and write it over the top of version 3, and that would become the current one when you do that. So you can do that sort of versioning. Also, if things get deleted, now if you're back in your, where are we? Yes, in your shared folders here, if you accidentally select a whole lot of stuff and hit the delete key, it will remove it from SharePoint. So that's potentially fairly dangerous. However, there is a recycle bin up on SharePoint. So things that have been deleted accidentally, you can go back into here and you can tick them on and you can restore them. If you've deleted folders though, an entire folder, you're going to see the folder plus all the subcomponents of that folder listed here. So if you've got lots of people using the same project at the same time, picking up where the mistake was made and the time exactly could be difficult to figure out what's been deleted at what time by whom and why. Although it does have some names here of the people that have done it, so maybe that would help as well to restore things that have been accidentally deleted through the synced folders. But do be careful of that. But it is nice to have it, so that's an advantage. There are issues, as we've been talking about. They are highlighted on the Autodesk Knowledge Network in several places. This is one of them. How do AutoCAD-based products interact with SharePoint? There's a few things that happen there, and some of the things you can try and do to make things work better. But pretty much the solution, the Autodesk solution, is to use something like BIM 360 rather than SharePoint. But if you don't have that as an option, with the provisos we've been talking about, SharePoint is possible. So the advantages of SharePoint synced folders is that they are live links to the cloud files. The Xrefs and Xrefs do work, as opposed to directly just downloading a drawing from the cloud. You won't have those. There is limited file locking, just be careful about it. But we do have the nice versioning, and we do have the recycle bin if things get accidentally deleted. Disadvantages, again, same as the advantage, it has limited file locking. So you've got to be careful with it. Come up with a process. Potentially lots of syncing going on with lots of people working on the same folders and network traffic issues. And for this workflow to be supported for Autodesk to support it in a limited sense anyway, you do need to be using the 2020 versions. So be aware of those as well. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of the half an hour. Let's have a quick look. We've got a couple of minutes to look at questions. Would turn off auto back files. I presume that's what that's meaning is back in, where were we? When we were back looking at the saving things, whether you'd want to turn off the auto backup of your files or auto saves. If you're going to be using the saving process to lock your files, it probably won't matter, because if you're opening your drawing and doing a save, then it's going to hide it, and then everything effectively, all the saves you're doing are happening on your local machine until you close that that drawing completely. Then it will be put back up on SharePoint, so it shouldn't matter, I don't think. The questions we've got there. No, I think that's it. So, coming back through to where we were. Thank you for this session, or for joining this session. I hope that gives you some pointers as to what can be done and what you need to be careful of. As I say, this is going to be saved up on our YouTube channel, so you can refer back to this later on if you want to, or if you want to forward that to anybody else who you think should see this, this little demonstration. So once again, thank you, stay safe, and have a good rest of the day.